Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to Community Live here on Sheffield Live 93.2 FM. Chris and Ollie here, and we have actor Mark Hampton. Good afternoon.
Hi there, Chris. Nice to be here. Thank you.
Thank you for joining me today. For our listeners at home, give us a bit of background. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I am an actor. I'm a screenwriter, and I'm a film director. I am in my second renaissance, my first renaissance, my second run around the block as an actor. I was an actor many, many years ago when I was a younger man, and I've taken a bit of a break from the industry, and well, quite a long break from the industry when I've had my own children. I'm now in the fortunate position over the last sort of 4 or 5 years where I've been able to come back into the industry, and kind of get back onto the radar as an actor. Have managed to kind of secure quite a few film and TV roles, and have kind of ever increasing sort of stature of those roles. I have a screenplay that has been optioned by a production company that we're hoping to shoot next year, and I have written and directed my own feature this year, which I'm hoping to release next year. So it's kind of all kind of accumulating into a kind of a lot of stuff that's going to be coming to the fore in 2024. So I'm really excited about the journey that I've been on, but also more excited about like where the next steps are and what's coming.
And I mean, you worked with an Academy Award winning actor as well, F. Murray Abraham. So tell us a bit about that experience.
That was my first ever movie, and I did not know that F. Murray Abraham was actually in the cast when I arrived on set. And the first I knew about him being in the film was when we were filming a scene on a boat, and he walked into the scene. Cameras were rolling mid-scene, and I was in character as this young prisoner. It's a prison movie. It's set in Thailand, and this is a sequence where we're escaping at the end of the movie on a boat. And he walked into the scene, and obviously he'd kind of been ferried there and only got in makeup, and there's only walks onto set at the last minute when they're ready and all the rest of it. And so I was faced with Academy Award winner F. Murray Abraham right in the middle of the scene, and had to just kind of carry on with the scene, which was hilarious. But he was great. He's a Hollywood great, and he was full of stories of old Hollywood and stuff like that. So he was a great person to be around, a great person to kind of observe as someone who was a young actor and he's still learning very much at the time, to observe his process and how he kind of went about finding a scene. And also for me, it was a huge step forward because it was my first movie. And the thing that I remember the most clearly is that this is back in the day when films were shot on film. So when a camera turned over, you could hear the as the film went
Yeah,
through
yeah,
the
yeah,
camera.
sure.
And I remember going onto set for the first time and doing the rehearsals and the camera moved. And I was like, this is all so cool. We've got this amazing set and the camera's on a dolly, it's moving. And I remember the very first take that I ever did. And I just heard that. And it's like, wow, we are now exposing film. What I'm doing now is being captured on film for the first time ever. And my heart was absolutely racing. But it was an amazing experience. It really was amazing. I spent sort of 3 weeks in Italy shooting this thing. It was an Italian co-production, so it had, Marco Leonardi, who was the guy, the teenager from Cinema Paradiso, was in it as well. So it had kind of some big names in it, and it was just great to be kind of part of that. It was a real ensemble piece because as I say, we're in a prison. There's a whole group of different characters, all very different, and we all got to kind of play our part in, how the escape went, and being part of the Marco's, story
Yeah.
ultimately.
And I mean, as an actor yourself and a director and producer, I've got to ask, who are your main influences?
So I'm a child of the 80s. So I grew up with Spielberg movies. I love the way that Spielberg tells a story. I love the way that he brings a kind of magical sort of mystery to, you know, suburban America. He brings something to it that makes it feel kind of otherworldly. And even if it is literally otherworldly in the case of things like E.T. and whatnot. And I love that element of it. I am a huge fan of uh Spielberg, so George Lucas, all those classics, James Cameron, for his kind of vision and the fact that he has that kind of unique kind of drive and the ability to kind of create what he creates. The guy hasn't got so many of the top 10 movies of all time by mistake. His process is pretty incredible in terms of what he creates. So I'm a big fan of the big studio movies. I'm a big fan of I love kind of franchises, but I also love, one of my favorite movies is sort of City of God. So I love movie. That was an incredible movie that had such a powerful impact on me. Other movies I like, Brazil is a favorite. So Terry Gilliam as well. That just crazy out there imagination being brought to life on the big screen, I just think is phenomenal. So I have a real eclectic kind of range of kind of influences and tastes. But ultimately, I just think we all just like good stories, right? We like
Yeah,
good stories told in a beautiful way, and I think that's what cinema is able to provide. Have a captive audience with that huge screen, and this is where cinema and high-end television kind of deviate, as you have got the ability to just capture a viewer with that huge screen and just carry them through a story with
yeah.
just you, the filmmaker, and that one viewer. And I just think that's a remarkable position to be in as a filmmaker.
And I mean, we mentioned a few influences like Terry Gilliam, Steven Spielberg, George Lucas. But if there was anybody that you could work with in the near future, who would it be and why?
I love Chris McQuarrie. I mean, I think Chris McQuarrie is he's a fantastically intelligent, brilliant writer and director, and right from The Usual Suspects and onwards. And for not it's one of those movies where I remember seeing The Usual Suspects when it first came out and just walked right around, turned around and walked straight back in to watch it again. It was that kind of movie where you were like, oh my god, I have to just watch this whole thing again. It was so clever, it was so brilliantly sort of structured and well put together, and I love the way that he now makes those mission films. There's like the Mission Impossible movies are an action spy franchise that actually delivers incredibly high quality entertainment. They're fantastic kind of
Mm.
blockbusters, and I think that's because they bring an intelligence to them. They bring an awareness of character to them, and they bring a need to connect with the audience with them. And they don't just rely on the spectacle, which they have in spades. Obviously, they have all the spectacle, but it's that combination of filmmaking that really lands, and that's what separates those films from something like a Fast and Furious, or something else whereby they rely too heavily on the spectacle, and the connection with the characters isn't always there. That's what I grew up with. Again, going back to my influences, the movies I loved were the movies where there was big action, but it was impressive and you cared about what happened to the people in it.
Yeah.
If you don't care about the central character, it can be the biggest sequence you've ever committed to celluloid, but if you don't care what happens to that person, then it means nothing to the viewer. And I think McQuarrie does a great job of that. I would love to be in a mission movie. That'd be phenomenal.
I mean, as you say, you're an actor from the 80s, a child actor from the 80s. I mean, and how times have changed with the movie industry. I mean, how do you feel? Do you feel it's changed for the better, or
I think that when people look at franchises and they look at the studio heads who want to just churn out the same old remakes and reboots and whatnot, I think what they don't I think that what they forget is that's all how it's always been. That's always how it's been. They've always tried to churn out sequels and of existing IP that they know is going to make money, and they've always been risk averse in terms of new ideas. And it's always been down to the filmmakers to kind of force that to break through. And I think you can look at franchises where there are many movies that all feel a bit the same, but then you could also look at someone like Christopher Nolan, who's taken the idea of doing a franchise like the Batman franchise and taken it to a whole new level of kind of artistic kind of cinematic artistry. So I think there is space for everything. I think we are a bit too focused in the cinema on big event movies. There's little scope for small independent movies. We're really struggling on the independent side, especially in this country, and I think that's a real shame. And the strikes that have been on recently for writers and actors have really demonstrated that in the UK, but by the fact that we basically went out of business in film and TV over here because all the American projects weren't filming. So I think there does need to be more help for indie productions to break through. I think also perhaps I think more people need to think of independent film production that as still being a business. You still have to sell a product. Don't just make your art house thing that for you. Yes, make it for you, but just be aware that someone else has to want to watch it for you to be able to sell tickets and be able to make your next movie. And that ultimately, as a filmmaker, I think that's what we all want. We just want to be able to make our next film.
and I've got to say, I mean, I've got to correct myself. I said I said you were a child actor of the 80s, didn't I?
No,
Sorry, I meant child of the 80s. I
I
do
was a
apologise
child
for
of the
that.
80s. I was a child of the 80s. I wasn't a child actor of the 80s. No, there's no, sadly, there's no kind of Ryan Gosling clip of me dancing on the Mickey Mouse Club.
So, I mean, you've been in quite a few impressive films like Tomb Raider. You've also starred in as the solicitor of Kane Dingle as well.
Yeah.
Video. I mean, tell us a bit about that.
That was a really fun gig. I went up there to Leeds to film with Emmerdale, and they needed someone who was going to be essentially, working for Kane Dingle when he appeared to have shot somebody. So it was a big dramatic storyline, part of their 50th anniversary. And so I went up there with these expectations of, okay, well, it looks like Kane did this. I had some great scenes with as his solicitor in the interview room, and then with just me and him together. And that was a fun scene to do. And he's like all actors who play villains, he's the loveliest guy you could ever meet. I find this all the time. The nicest actors are the ones who play villains.
The villains.
It's a funny thing, but I had these expectations, right? This is a guy who appears to have shot somebody, so there's going to be a court case, and I was imagining quite a long run, and then as in the story, it turned out actually he didn't do it, and the thing wound up, wrapped up very quickly indeed. And so I was like, I was kind of disappointed, but it was great to go up and be part of that show. It's such an iconic show. Everyone was fantastic on it, and it was just lovely to just be, especially around, as I say, their 50th anniversary, to be part of a kind of a big important storyline, and to have a scene with him, who's an iconic character from the series. That was a really great experience.
And I've got to ask. Of course, like filming and filming an episode of Emmerdale is completely different to each other. But for filming Emmerdale as the solicitor of Kane Dingle, how long was that process? Was you
It,
there a
it
couple of days?
It was only a couple of days, yeah. There was a couple of days, and that was really defined by the fact that the scenes that I was in took place in different episodes. And so, they shoot a crazy amount. They've got to get a show on the air, every day of the week. And so they've got to shoot, 30 minutes of content, edited content every single day. They have 3 units running all the time, all doing different blocks of episodes with different directors. And so it's a really well-oiled, smooth running machine. And yeah, I just went up there a couple of days on 2 different trips up there to go and do the scenes that I was in. But it was yeah, it was interesting to see that whole machine just running so smoothly. Yeah, it was great.
And gotta mention about you winning the best actor at the Creative Industry Award. So tell us a little bit about that.
So the Creative Industry Awards is a ceremony that sort of celebrates emerging artists in various different artistic fields, from models to advertising agencies to photographers to videographers and includes actors in the category. And earlier in the year, I found out that I'd been nominated for Actor of the Year, and this is quite an interesting award because it's not a Best Actor award where you're being nominated for a performance in a particular thing. This is Actor of the Year. And I think that, and I still to this day don't know who it was who nominated me, who got me into the hat, but there I was in the hat, and there was a public vote, and then I won. And I was so touched that A, I'd been considered in the first place, B, that people had voted for me, and I had that much support. It was really a really lovely moment. And was kind of cool because I was working on a big advertising campaign in China at the time. So I wasn't able there to go and actually collect the award. So I had to send somebody in my stead to go and collect it for me, which I thought in hindsight, I was like, oh, that's quite a cool thing to be, to be able to say, I'm sorry, I can't be there. I'm working in a foreign country on another job. So there's no better thing than to be acting as an actor. So the only reason to not show up would be if you were actually working. And that luckily that was the case for me. But I think the award itself, I like to think of it as a bit of a stake in the ground. Obviously somebody's looked at what I've been working on and the things that I've done, and it's more about the recognizing your commitment and the work that you do, and how much you're putting yourself out there, than it is, as I say, kind of recognizing an individual performance. And my hope is that over the next year, 2, 3, 4, whatever years, I can live up to that and really prove to the organizers and those who voted that actually, yes, it was the right decision.
I've got to say this as well. There's a lot of streaming platforms, so there's a lot of content that you would have thought that could have been suitable for cinemas, but we decide mostly now to either put it on Netflix or the Amazon Prime. I mean, what's your views on this?
I think it depends whether or not it's being made by at Netflix or Amazon, because you might find that actually rather than somebody choosing to put it on that platform, but maybe that was the only platform that was prepared to fund it. They may have gone around the traditional production companies and studios, and nobody may have wanted to pay for it except for one of the streaming platforms. So if you look at, Scorsese has done it a couple of times now with projects that would have been difficult to justify the cost for if on a traditional
Sure.
cinematic theatrical release, and yet he is able to produce the movies he produces and direct what he wants to direct because he has the backing of those streaming platforms. And then you can make a movie that's 3.5 hours long. You can make, because you don't expect people to sit through it in the cinema, because cinemas lose money when movies are that long, right? They only get one showing when they could have had two if it was a 2-hour movie. And so it's a difficult kind of financial equation. But if you go to the streamers, then you get creative freedom, you get to make a film as long as you want. Then I think that's very attractive for a lot of filmmakers. You can't beat the cinematic experience. And I think a lot of directors will insist on there being a theatrical release because they want people to see it on the big screen. But actually, if it's the streamers that are paying for it, then it's actually up to the studios to step up and match their commitment to the creatives, I think.
And I mean, to our listeners at home who want to break into this kind of industry, like actor, director, or screenwriter, I mean, what advice would you give? And also, how difficult is it?
It's really difficult, but it's not impossible. If you were to look at it from a perspective of, I'm going to choose the job that has the best odds of me succeeding, you wouldn't choose acting, film directing, screenwriting. They're tough industries. Otherwise, everyone would do them, right? They're not easy to get into, but it's not impossible. I think the first thing, you need to develop your abilities. So if you're an actor, you've been working on your acting craft. If you're a screenwriter, director, same sort of thing. The best way to do that is to just do it. You need to get out there and be doing the thing that you want to do. Because I see a lot of people who are saying to themselves and putting on their post social media, I'm an aspiring actor, I'm an aspiring writer. And I always say, take aspiring out. You are an actor. Own it. Be that thing. You may not be being paid for it yet. You may not be being paid very well for it yet, but you are an actor. Own that thing. Own the craft of that thing and the skills and the talent that you have. Then you need to start building on your network. Who knows about you? A lot of people say that the film industry and entertainment is all about who you know. It's actually not. It's actually about who knows you. Who thinks of you when they have a role to cast? Who thinks of you when there is something going into production, right? So that's what's important. So, and you have a better opportunity now than ever before to connect with casting directors, with producers, with directors, because everyone's on social media and everyone can be contacted. You may not be able to direct message them straight away, but you can at least join in conversations that they're having, make them aware of you. So there's that. There's your craft. There's your network, and then there's your mindset. You just have to believe that you can do it. If you were, like I say, if you were taking a sensible approach and you said, what are the odds? You wouldn't do it. But, to quote Han Solo, never tell me the odds, right? I mean, you just got to believe it's going to be you. And that's the only way forward.
Thank you for sharing that with me, Mark. And I mean, have you got any future projects that you'd like to talk about, or is it all secretive at the moment?
No, there's loads of stuff coming up. So I've got a few things coming out this month. I've got a film called Control Out, which is in which I play the Prime Minister of the UK. That's a thriller. It's got Kevin Spacey as a kind of faceless villain. It's a bit like Phone Booth movie, but in this case, it's a self-driving car that a character gets trapped in and starts to be used as a weapon. And there's this voice takes over the car and starts making it do all these things. And I play the prime minister of the country, and he's having an affair with a woman who's in the car. So there's a very strong kind of emotional connection, and there's a lot of jeopardy. That's a fun ride. That's out on the 15th of December. And then January, I've got two projects being released. The first one is a film called Lift, which is a Netflix movie with Kevin Hart, in which I play a fighter pilot, and that was a lot of fun. As a guy who once made a short version of Top Gun and won an Empire Award for it, that was a dream come true for me. I got to get all the gear on and sit in a mock-up of a fighter plane. And then I've got another film coming out called One More Shot, which is on Sky Cinema on the 12th of January. And that's a Scott Adkins action movie. And it's a follow-up to his film One Shot. And in the same vein as that movie, it all takes place in one continuous shot. So it was filmed to kind of seamlessly cut together as a single take. And I play a CIA agent in that one. And then later in the year, there's another production coming out, which is called Heads of State, and that's got John Cena and Idris Elba. And I again play a CIA agent. There's a bit of a theme occurring there. And I have a great scene with Idris in the back of the presidential limo. You know, we call it the Beast, and and he's a great actor. He's a big guy, a big star, and a big guy. You shake the hand of John Cena and you feel like a bit of your arm has disappeared into it. He's that, but he's a lovely, lovely guy and he was great to work with. So I'm looking forward to that. And then, of course, my own project. So I directed a boxing drama called Unlicensed. I'm working on post-production on that right now. So that should be coming out at some point in 2024. I'd love to come and talk to you about that when the time comes. And then I have a heist movie that I wrote, which has been optioned by a production company that should hopefully be going into production kind of middle of the year. So, 2024 is ramping up to be, fairly full already, which is great news for me.
I'm looking forward to it. Thank you for sharing those projects with me, Mark. So, I mean, for our listeners at home who want to follow you on social media, do you have like Facebook,
Yeah,
Instagram?
so I mean, if you want to follow me on Instagram or Twitter or X, then Hammy Actor is the handle. So HAMMY Actor, all one word. And that's where you'll find me posting about, what I'm up to, what I'm doing. They can go to markhamptonofficial.com, which is my website. And I think on all platforms I'm Hammy Actor, apart from perhaps Threads, which might be markhampton.actor. I'm not sure, something like that. But if you Google me, you'll find me.
And my final question for you, Mark, is there anything that you would like to say to our audience who's listening right now?
I would like to say that I feel blessed to be able to be an actor. I feel really grateful the opportunity that I have to come out and perform and create characters. I love being on film and TV, and I hope that one day I get to bring them some performance that they find touches them in some way. And also, if they happen to have voted for me for the Creative Industry Awards, then thank you, because I don't know who any of you are, so I'm hugely grateful.
Mark, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Chris. It's been fun.